This show is part of the Trans Podcaster Visibility Initiative.
Well, it is that time of year again, and as always, another holiday review is upon us. This time, though, we've got something a little different going on. We're going to be joined by Rocky Red Panda Live, as well as Ken K Reviews, as we discuss Leprechaun in the Hood. So, let's start out with introducing our reviewers for today. First up, we've got, of course, from Ken K Reviews. Ken K, you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're from, and who you are?
For all you new people, I'm Ken K. I'm Canadian. I make biscuits. You're welcome, America.
And Rocky, how about yourself?
Hey guys, it's just Sasha. Unfortunately, Rocky is currently under the weather due to the COVID shot. He will be back with this video updated and his parts put in, but until then, we're experiencing technical difficulties and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. In the meantime, definitely check out his channel live with Rocky Red Panda, courtesy of PND Studios here on YouTube at your earliest and soonest convenience.
Those two fellow YouTubers and podcasts are certainly worth checking out, so please do so. In the interim, why don't we start with a bit of a summary of this celluloid piece of garbage? Ken K, care to take her away?
First and foremost, I think I need to pat myself on the back as I have managed to let the last 2 decades go by without having ever laid eyes on a single frame of footage from Leprechaun in the Hood. And I was able to take an immense amount of pride in that. And because of you, Sasha, I now have to let that pride go. I lay the blame squarely at your feet. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you. Even as a black person, I'm more embarrassed than offended by Leprechaun in the Hood. Just looking at it from the standpoint of what was going on in film, and especially independent film in the 90s, as far as the ever ubiquitous Hood films of those times. And it got to the point that by 96, you had the Wayans brothers parodying most Hood films that had come out by then with Don't Be a Menace While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. And I just found myself kind of amazed at the level of poor quality in this film, even as a schlocky horror film, which was, I guess, like 4th or 5th in the franchise for Leprechaun. And it's just kind of funny to watch because it's really kind of terrible from the onset, where you have the introduction of Ice-T's character in the 70s in an astoundingly cartoonish afro wig and pimp outfit, and of course you have the whole storyline of him finding the leprechaun's flute, and that being sort of what becomes the source of his power and influence over the next 20 years into present day. And there's so much to, not necessarily, I mean, there is stuff to hate, because let's be clear, nothing gets better after that introduction. And I'm just kind of face-palming throughout the entirety of the film as I'm watching it and just thinking to myself, I feel like this is something even Ice-T, didn't need to do, especially by this point, because I think he had already started on Law & Order SVU, and if I'm mistaken about that, then, all I'm saying is, thank God for that show, even though it doesn't really stop him from being in terrible films from time to time. And then, yeah, you have to factor in that this is, you know, the 5th film in this horror franchise after the 4th one had taken place in space. And then you come back down to Earth to do something like this. It's just kind of funny to see the trajectory of horror movie franchises where they have that moment where they go into space, like even Jason with Jason X had that. But again, you have a situation where by this point in whenever this film came out, that like the fruit is so low-hanging as far as jokes, as far as racist stereotypes. Like, you basically have to dig it out of the ground. That's how low-hanging the fruit is in Leprechaun in the Hood. And it's just, I feel sorry for everyone involved in this film, and it's hard to talk about because it is just so demonstrably terrible. Like, they really went above and beyond to make this one of the worst pieces of crap that I've ever seen as far as a film is concerned, especially in terms of low-budget horror, because you can still have a little bit of charm and ingenuity as far as a film where you don't have much in the way of resources, and this seemed to just want to be terrible. And I can understand that for certain films, but this just felt like it went out of its way to have no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Thank you for that succinct summary there, King K. It's greatly appreciated. Rocky, is there anything you would like to add in particular about the convenience clerk by the name of Cho that is portrayed by Jack Ong? Thank you for that, Rocky. Here's my take. In many circles, this is considered a blaxploitation, dark comedy, horror film.
Sure, there was a bit of a revival in blaxploitation films in the late 90s to early 2000s, with cinema like Original Gangsters, Foxy Brown, Friday, House Party, and many, many others. Those films even drifted into horror themes like Tales from the Hood, Bones, Candyman, Spawn, Plane, and much, much more. Even a lot of this trickled into mainstream media, but a substantially larger sample was found in home video, cable, and television markets. Given that Trimark was on their last leg during the pre-production of Leprechaun in the Hood, they saw a way to make a quick buck on current trends, trying to help themselves survive into the millennium. Sadly, it didn't work. They got consumed by Lionsgate immediately after this film's release.
Sadly, this was handled all very wrong. Making a blaxploitation film with a bit of comedy when it's a franchise based on not only Irish but Celtic folklore just feels like a cash grab, especially based on the films that were out at the time.
Then, to have the majority of your writers and director be Caucasian, cisgender, heterosexual males raped with toxic masculinity, possessing homophobic and transphobic ideas, even for that time was, well, it's not going to work on any level, especially if you were just doing it to stay afloat. Bad writing and direction aside, to be racist in your own movie using stereotypes like Mr. Chow and a supposed blaxploitation film is just unredeemable. Then there's the aforementioned transphobia and homophobia itself.
Misgendering a transgender character is entirely a different thing. It's still hate speech. But to use slurs, refer to her as deceptive, refer to her as a potential rapist, have her possibly be raped and murdered is crossing a huge, monstrous line in hate and discrimination.
To further these horrific ideals, cross-dressing and drag are used during the climax of the film to trick and deceive Oryx Lebdan, the Leprechaun, in hopes of defeating him, reviving the awful trope that people like me and many other of the trans community are just men in dresses trying to fool you into being attracted to us. And personally, fuck that, and fuck you for thinking it. I can forgive a lot of plot holes and bad conveyances in a film, which there are plenty here, but there is a line that should never be crossed.
This film clearly jumped the fucking shark. Kincaid, what is your final verdict here?
Everything you said, Sasha, about the film is spot on. Like, everything that kind of passes for humor in this film is legitimately unforgivable, and I just feel like it's a situation where I can't even think of how I would improve upon the film. Like, it's not even worth giving it that deep of an exploration, because sometimes you look at something that's terrible and you find things that you say to yourself, oh, that's interesting, maybe they could have expanded on that and made it better. I don't have any faith that there is any way that Leprechaun in the Hood could be better than what it is. Like, I don't believe that at all. I feel like, you know, imagine if you're trying to fry a turkey and you fill the fryer to the brim with boiling oil and then try to put the turkey in. Can you imagine what happens after that?
And Rocky, what's your final verdict here? Yeah, unlike many of the films in the Leprechaun franchise, I cannot recommend this one. At least not without a keg of green Irish beer and a handle of whiskey.
Even though you'll have more groans than laughter at this dated train wreck, it is the next in line of the franchise, if you've been following along. Next year's should be a bit better based on a preview, but this one, contrived plot alone, and the tacked-in Leprechaun with the racial, homophobic, and transphobic stereotypes, well, I just can't recommend this one at all.
Let's just be honest here. It's horrible. It's just bad. And it was clearly a cash grab by Trimark during its dying breath before Lionsgate finally took them over. Any final thoughts from you two?
Even with that caveat, Sasha, I don't think that even that is enough to put you in a state of mind to watch Leprechaun in the Hood. And you also have to factor in people like me who are teetotalers who won't have that as an option. So as far as, you know, trying to be a completist, if you're like a fan of the preceding films in the franchise, I would say that you are missing absolutely nothing if you were to skip this entry. And I also have to acknowledge that there was a follow-up to this specifically called Back to the Hood, which I don't even want to touch with the 10-foot shillelagh, because if it's the same director, writer, or both involved, and even if it's not, quite honestly, I am confident that there is nothing there for me to explore in that film, in addition to Leprechaun in the Hood. Just, again, I'm really not interested in this franchise. Like, for this to be my introduction to the Leprechaun franchise, I don't even want to see what the rest of the films have to offer. And that's just me. If you want to see Ice-T in a cheesy horror movie, you'd be much better off watching Blood Runners, where he plays a vampire bootlegger in the 1920s. It's by no means an objectively good film, but it is leagues better than Leprechaun in the Hood.
Well, until next slime, folks. Keep it real and unpleasant streams. And please, avoid Leprechaun in the Hood. Try to have a safe and happy St. Patrick's Day. A little bit of that green beer and a ton of whiskey, but responsibly. Peace and chicken grease. Catch you next slime.
Yo, that's coolio.
Jesus loves me, this I know. If you don't, I find a hole. His mama's name was Mary Jo. His disciples were some bad mofos. Little ones going out to the crack house. They are weak. Jesus, give a shout out. Try to stay strong, cause we belong to the fold. We gone before long. Jesus loves me, I don't know. Jesus loves me. The hell if I know. If Jesus loves me, then it's my day. We better pray, or he'll make us pay. The Lord's name, I take it in vain. Why don't you, Jesus, stop the pain? Jesus works in a mysterious way. That ain't no answer, I'm gonna do it my way. Jesus loves us, we don't know. Jesus loves us, the hell if we know. Jesus works in a mysterious way. That ain't no answer, we gonna do it our way. What?
Sit down, boy.
That's it?
Give it up.
What?
Give it up. Come on now.
Get off.
Takes out there. Come on.